All right, blessings, blessings. So good to see everyone here today. Those of you that are joining in and that will be joining in, we welcome you to Congregation Rehoboth, where we teach the Torah and we expound on the word of Yah. So glad to be here once again. It's a blessing to be alive and well, doing the will of Yah. Looking forward to today once again, as always. We have another exciting, spirit-filled word that I pray you would definitely enjoy. And I know that it's going to be an awesome time today. So we look forward to getting the word in and making sure that the truth of the word comes out today. Again, we look forward to everyone joining in. Come on in the building. Tell a friend, tell one, tell all. Go ahead and do me a favor though. I want you to like and share, thumb up the video and share this live, so that people can receive a message stating that they should be joining as well. The more likes we have, the algorithm will recognize that this is something that should be watched, and it will push out this link to those on my page, those on your page, etc., etc., etc. All right. We won't stop teaching the truth. We're going to bring the truth like a monsoon. It's just going to rain and beat down on you until you either completely reject or completely submit to the word of Yah. You know, one of the things I'm realizing, y'all, is that when you are sincere and in two areas, in living and teaching and preaching the word, your prayers are going to be answered. You know, sometimes it surprises me. Sometimes it surprises me when I see my prayers being answered. And these are prayers that I prayed a while back for. Prayers that, yeah, man, it blows me away to see that these prayers are coming to pass. And so I recommend that if you desire to see your prayers answered, I really do recommend living the word and teaching. And you may say, well, I'm not a pastor. I'm not supposed to teach. Oh, yes, you are. The scripture says that the word of Yah was once and for all delivered to the saints, and that we must contend for the faith earnestly. Then he says this, that as a believer, not as a pastor, but as a believer, we should always be ready to give an answer or an apologetic or a response to those who ask a question, and thereby you will be engaged in teaching. All right. And then if you are a parent, go with me here. You are constantly teaching your children, not just about the worldly life, but about the godly life, which is found none other than in scripture. And so you are definitely a teacher. Husbands, if you are the husband of one wife, you are indeed a teacher. No, you're not a pastor, but you are the shepherd of your home, and your voice should be the final authority when it comes to the direction of your family as you guys walk in the direction of Yah. I know I'm not going to get too many amens on that one, but it's okay. It's the truth anyway. So yeah, if you want your prayers to be answered, the scripture says this: the prayers of the righteous availeth much. Now, what makes you righteous? Because you go out and do a good deed every now and then? No, absolutely not. What makes you righteous is the righteousness of Yeshua HaMashiach. Come on and go with me here. That's what makes all of us righteous. It's not our righteousness. Our righteousness, as the prophet says, is as filthy rags. And if you do a study on that phrase in Hebrew, you will see it's very interesting what that actually means. It's a woman's cloth when she's on her nida. Oh, come on and go with me here. That's what our righteousness amounts to in the sight of Yah. And so we need the righteousness of the Mashiach. All right. And so go ahead and thumb up the video, share the live. I'm going to put the platforms that you can go to in order to thumb this video up and indeed share this live. You give me a second here. I'll do that for you. Yes, indeed. Here it comes. And that's out of. Okay. So yeah, if you can go to. I'm going to share that right now. You should be seeing that. If you can go to these platforms, guys, and thumb up the video, share the live. We would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you go to YouTube, you can also see what I'm about to share as well. So you can see it there. So if you can go to YouTube, to Congregation Rehoboth, and you can see right down here, Bible's Voice. Go ahead and thumb up the video and share the live on your YouTube page as well. If you could do that for us. And you could also see the same platforms on Facebook that I'm sharing right now with you. Let's see. Make it larger for you. Hold on. There we go. There we go. So you can see Congregation Rehoboth and Bible's Voice on YouTube. And then you can see all of our platforms on Facebook. So if you can do me a favor and go ahead and go to those platforms and then thumb up the video and share the live. Also, if you feel that you're being blessed and you are a part of Congregation Rehoboth, then you should cheerfully give. You can use Zelle at congregation.rehoboth@gmail.com. Or if you are not a member of Congregation Rehoboth and you feel that you're being blessed by the teachings, you're being encouraged, that you're learning, you're growing, you're being challenged, we encourage you to also cheerfully give, as long as it is not taken away from your contribution to your congregation. We definitely don't want to do that. We don't want to take away. But if you're being blessed, we do ask that you contribute to the platform and allow these lessons to continue to thrive and go forth. All right. And so we're going to continue as we jump into part 12, y'all. Good gracious. Good gracious. We're in part 12 and we are, man, moving, 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 moving. Hopefully, we'll end next week. Hopefully, I'm prayerful. If we can get through today, I believe that next week will be the last lesson in this series where I will wrap up um, the issue at hand and bring it full circle to show you why this Sabbath or Shabbat controversy exists. In other words, why is it that we have the same Bible? We have the same access to the Greek, the Hebrew, the history. Everyone does. Every single person has the same access to the same information, but somehow we differ. We disagree on the Shabbat. You have the majority of people who say they believe in Yeshua, who believe wrongly, of course, that the Shabbat is on Sunday. We have the same access to the same information. But what gets in the way, I believe, is man-made doctrine. There are various reasons why people say that the Shabbat is no longer relevant, that the seventh day honoring of Shabbat is no longer relevant. Part of it has to do with believing that the law, the Torah, was temporary. It was not meant to be a permanent institution, although Paul says in Romans 3 and 30 through 31 that he didn't come to destroy or eliminate the Torah. He came to us to establish. He said, we don't, let me go there because I don't want to misquote Paul here. So I'm going to go to Romans chapter 3, and I'm going to go all the way down to, to the end here. All right, in verse 31. Actually, let's start in verse 30. Seeing it is one God, which shall justify the circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith. You see that? So he's gonna justify the circumcision, those who are Jews, those who are not Jews, the uncircumcision, both through faith. Okay? So even the Israelites in the Torah, even though they were circumcised, they were justified through faith. And then verse 31 says, do we then make void the law through faith? That's what the issue is. There are those who believe that on Sunday is a Shabbat because the law or the Torah has been made void because of faith. Okay? We no longer need the Torah because we have faith now. Paul says, God forbid. He said that is the most ridiculous idea that he's ever heard. He says, yea, we establish the law. We establish the Torah. We don't get rid of it. We don't make it void. We don't, come on and go with me, y'all. Paul is saying clearly that we don't katargeo or to render the Torah or the law unimportant, inactive, inoperative, or to render it idle, like it's just sitting on a shelf somewhere, to be ceased. The Torah is not deceased, or has it ceased. It's not an end to it. It hasn't been abolished. It hasn't been terminated. And so we don't make the Torah void, Paul says. But he says, God forbid that we do that, but we histomen. Okay? we make the Torah stand. We cause it to stand upright because it is a measuring stick, because the end of the Torah or the goal of the Torah is Yeshua. If we could live in a righteous way, which the Torah teaches us how, it points to Yeshua. It is the goal of the Torah to point to Yeshua. So someone says, well, why can't we just, have faith in Yeshua? Well, you're supposed to have faith in Yeshua, but you're also, as Revelation, this is where you got to put the whole Torah and the word of Yah into play here. Yes, we're supposed to have the faith in Yeshua, but also, as Revelation 14:12 says, here's the patience or the endurance of those who are really saints or believers, that we keep the commandments of Yah, okay, which is the Torah, y'all. Just like Paul says, we establish it. Over in Revelation, John says the same thing. Here's the patience, the endurance. If you can endure, this is how you endure: by keeping the commandments and having the faith of Yeshua. Okay? And so it's not one or the other, it's both and. And so this is what many people misunderstand. This is what many people falsely believe, that the Torah has been eliminated, when we have passages in the Brit Hadashah affirming, confirming that is just nonsense. And so today, guys, we're going to continue with this Sabbath controversy. Hopefully we'll be done by next week, dealing with Sunday through Saturday. Is that a historical structure of the week? Is it fictional or is it biblical? And so what we want to do, and what we've been doing, is we've been asking this question: is there historical evidence showing that the Sumerian civilization has earlier origins than the Egyptian? Why is that important? That doesn't have anything to do with the Bible. Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does. Because you remember, Sumeria was the Cushite kingdom found in the book of Genesis, chapter 10, and also the Cushite kingdom today is the Ethiopian kingdom. And the Egyptian kingdom in the scripture is known as Mizraim. All right. All sons of Cush, sons of Ham, and which they are the grandchildren of Noah. And so this has not just historical importance, but biblical significance as well. And so the question again, for those of you who don't like the Bible, or who says, oh, the Bible is just a fictional account, we want to look at the historical evidence. We already have the biblical evidence, and I'm going to show you how history confirms and affirms the biblical account. But we're going to ask this question: is there historical evidence showing that the Sumerian civilization was earlier than the Egyptian? Why is that an important question? Well, this question is essential because it goes to the heart of the Sabbath controversy itself, y'all. And I'm going to show you how. I've been showing. And this is the heart of the Sabbath controversy. What civilization has established, I made a mistake there. Let me fix it. Has established the 7-day week structure, Sunday through Saturday. Now, if the Egyptian culture was first, then they have what is called the Decans week, which is a 10-day week. We went over that a few weeks ago. All right. If the Sumerian civilization established the 7-day week structure, Sunday through Saturday, then we're going to show you where they got that structure from. Y'all, this is going to listen, y'all. If the Egyptian culture was the first to establish the week, which is in Egyptian culture a 10-day week, that's one issue. Now, in that decans or 10-day week, it doesn't say whether it's, the Sunday through Saturday issue is not on the table anymore, because they did not use those as days to designate the differences between what day of the week it was. They had a completely different system and structure, which leaves us with the Sumerian kingdom or civilization, which has in their 7-day week the Sunday through Saturday. But we have, as we shared a few weeks back, there is this new movement called the ISO 8601, who recently, within the 20th century, y'all, we're going to go over this again next week. We went over it a few weeks back, but the ISO 8601 structure is seeking to establish the 7-day week, starting with Monday as the first day, not Sunday. And y'all, when I tell you, I'm going to show you the origins of why they're trying to do that. And again, it goes back to this whole Shabbat controversy. All right. But today, we're going to further prove that the Sumerian civilization indeed came before the Egyptian. All right. And so I hope you are ready to engage. I hope you are ready to take notes. I hope you are prepared with something to write with, something to take notes on. This is class today, y'all. School is in. Let's get it. All right, here we go. So let's jump right into the issue. And I'm going to pick up where we left off last week. And if you did not hear what we talked about last week, then you're going to have to go back and listen, because I have a lot of information to cover, and it's already almost 10:30. So upon the death of, which Narmer was the first pharaoh of Egypt, he was worshipped as a neter. Neter is the Medu Neter word for God. As a very interesting side note, the word Medu Neter, which is the language of the Egyptians, some people use hieroglyphics. That is a Greek word for the Egyptian Medu Neter. Even the word Egyptian is Greek. The biblical designation for Egypt is Mizraim. That's a Hebrew word. Anyway, the Medu Neter. Medu means words. Whenever there's a U on the end of a word in Egyptian, it makes it plural. So Medu, which means words. Medu Neter means God, words of God. All right. And so, once again, the God that Narmer was worshipped as was Osiris. Again, that is a Greek word, and the Egyptian or Medu Neter word is Asar. Asar. And so let us look at a pyramid text, a source called the pyramid text. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I want you to see this. This book here is by E.A. Wallace Budge, who is one of the premier Egyptologists, European Egyptologists. And he does a commentary on the pyramid text. And so on pages 10 to 13, you got to read, man. If you want to be any kind of, anything, you got to read. You got to read. I'm an English teacher, but I've learned in my over 20 years of teaching in public schools that many children, I would say probably 80 to 90%, we don't read, period. Let alone understand what we're reading. And so we got to read. So I'm going to read a few pages, man. You can see 10 through 13, 15 and 16, but I'm going to read excerpts from this particular book called The Pyramid Text. Right. And so on page 10 of The Pyramid Text by E.A. Wallace Budge. And again, what we're going to be looking at is upon the death of a pharaoh, they were worshipped as a neter or a god. Narmer was worshipped as Osiris in the Greek, or Asar in the Medu Neter. All right, so here we go. Page 10, Pyramid Text. The Pyramid Text and the older texts quoted or embodied in them were written like every religious funerary work in Egypt for the benefit of the king. That is to say, to effect his glorious resurrection. Notice, guys, it said it was written for the benefit of the king or the pharaoh for his glorious resurrection. Now watch this. And to secure for him happiness in the other world and life everlasting. They were intended to make him become a king in the other world as he had been a king upon the earth. Okay, guys, so that is clearly saying that upon the death of a pharaoh or a king, same, no difference between a pharaoh and a king, that upon their death, they would be in the other world and they would be worshiped as a deity. Okay, let's continue. He was to reign over the gods and to have control over the powers of heaven and to have the power to command the spirits and souls of the righteous. As his ancestors, the kings of Egypt, notice that his ancestors were the kings of Egypt, as the kings of Egypt had ruled their bodies when they lived on earth. The Egyptians found that their king, who was an incarnation of the great God, died like other men, and they feared that even if they succeeded in effecting his resurrection by means of the pyramid text, he might die a second time in the other world. And so they spared no effort and left no means untried to make him not only a living soul in that tuat, or the word tuat is Medu Neter for other world, but to keep him alive there. The object of every prayer, every spell, every hymn, and every incantation contained in these texts was to preserve the king's life. This might be done in many ways. In the first place, it was necessary to provide a daily supply of offerings, which were offered up in a funerary temple that was attached to every pyramid. Now, what that's saying is that they offered these offerings up to this deceased king who was a king or a pharaoh on earth. They offered these offerings to keep him alive as a god in the other world. Do you guys see what I'm saying here? And so I want you to understand something just from the outset, that this concept of the pharaoh upon his death would be worshipped as a god in the other world. All right, let me keep going because that was page 10 and 11. Here we are on page 12. There were many reasons for this development, but the most important was extraordinary growth in the influence of the religion of Osiris, okay, which had before the close of the period of the sixth dynasty spread all over Egypt. This religion promised to all who followed it, high or low, rich or poor, a life in the world beyond the grave after a resurrection that was made certain to them through suffering, death, and resurrection of Osiris, who was the incarnation of the great primeval God who created the heavens and the earth. A few extracts illustrating the general contents of the pyramid text. All right. And so that's a very interesting concept there. All right, here we go. Page 15. We're going to read 15 and 16 now. Horus openeth the mouth of Osiris. Now remember, look at what our, am I sharing this? Hold on. No, I'm not. Let me share this. Okay, so remember, upon the death of, we're going to deal with Narmer, but this referred to any pharaoh in general. They believe this about their pharaohs. And so upon the death of a pharaoh like Narmer, he was worshipped as a neter or deity, and Narmer was worshipped as Osiris. Okay, and they were worshipped as a god in the other world. Okay, and so let me continue to read. Osiris, which we know was Narmer being worshipped, it says, the god Osiris shall open the mouth of my father with the iron that cometh forth from Set, with the meksha or meska instrument of iron, wherewith he opened the mouth of the gods, shall the mouth of the Osiris be opened. All right. And so this whole thing of opening the mouth was the evidence that this Pharaoh who died and was worshipped as Osiris, this was the evidence showing that he indeed was a god, that he was able to speak, that he was able to open his mouth and to say things and to speak great things that would control the lives of those who believed in him in the Egyptian spiritual concept. All right. And so I want you guys to get that. And so it says, and the Osiris shall walk and shall talk, and his body shall be with the great company of gods who dwell in the great house of the aged one, that is the sun god Re or Ra, who dwelt in Anu. And he shall take possession of the crown therein before Horus, the Lord of mankind. Hail, Osiris! Horus hath opened thy mouth and thine eyes with the instruments of Sabur and On, wherewith the mouths of the gods of the south were opened. All the gods, watch this, all the gods bring words of power. They recite them for thee. They're reciting them for Osiris or Asar so that he can repeat them and show that he is alive and worthy to be worshipped as a god in the other world. They make thee to live by them. Thou becomest the possessor of twofold strength. Thou makest the passes that give thee the fluid of life, and their life fluid is about thee. Watch this. Thou art protected, and thou art not to die. Thou shalt change thy form among the doubles of the gods. Now, this whole idea of the doubles is going back to this concept of you have one part of the king or the pharaoh being alive on earth, and then the double is when you are worshipped as a god in the other world. It says the doubles of the gods, though shalt rise up as a king of the south. Okay. Thou shalt rise up as a king of the north. Watch this. Thou shalt rise up as a king of the north. Thou art endowed with strength like all the gods of their doubles. Shu hath equipped thee. He hath exalted thee to the height of heaven. He hath made thee to be a wonder. He hath endowed thee with strength. Now remember, we talked about this last week, that you will rise up as the king of the south and the king of the north. Remember, who remembers the crown, or what the crown was called when a king on earth, when a pharaoh on earth would unify both the north and the south? Does anyone remember what that crown was called? Okay. All right. So this was one of the things we talked about last week. And when a king would unify both the north and the south, they would have a crown. Okay, let me show you real quick. And this crown, I'm trying to stall to give someone time to come up with it. It was called the Golden Horse. All right. And so every pharaoh had 5 different names. One of their names was the Golden Horse name. And this was the crown, or sorry, the name that was given to the pharaoh when he united upper and lower, or southern and northern Egypt. All right. And so if you look at this illustration here, with the king over upper Egypt, you had this white crown, this white looking crown. If you were the king of lower Egypt, you had this red crown. But when you united the kingdoms, then you got a name called the Golden Horse name. And so Narmer's name was called Big Narmer, translates to Golden Falcon Narmer. All right. It emphasized Narmer's divine royal power that he had to unite both upper and lower Egypt. And the crown looked like the one on the left.
Sorry, for clarification, the name of the crown is Golden Horus crown?
No, the name of so the pharaoh had 5 names.
Right, I have that in the notes, but I don't have the name of the crown.
It's called the, let's see.
That's why I didn't answer, because my note says 5 royal names given to pharaohs in Egypt, and then I have the Horus name, the Big Narmer.
Did I say what was the name of the crown?
Yes.
I meant what was the name of the pharaoh when he united the kingdom. I meant what was the name? What was his name when he united the kingdom? Not the name of the crown. Good question. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was the name. It was the Big Narmer name, or the Golden Horus name. And this name for Narmer, when he united the kingdom, it was called the Big Narmer, which means the Golden Falcon Narmer. And so that was his Golden Horus name. Big Narmer was his Golden Horus name, which translates into Golden Falcon Narmer. Okay. All right. And so let me get back to oh, yes. All right. So we're going to continue to read. And the last page is page 16. And it says on page 15 at the bottom, it says, all the gods bring words of power. They recite them for thee. They make thee to live by them. Thou hast becomest the possessor of twofold strength. Thou makest the passes that give thee the fluid of life. All right. We read that. And then it says that you shall rise up as the king of the south. You shall rise up as the king of the north. Thou art endowed with strength like all the gods and their doubles. Okay, so it's basically showing you this whole concept of upon the death of a pharaoh, they will be worshipped as a god. And in Narmer's particular case, when he died, he was worshipped as Asar or Osiris. Okay, and so let's continue. And so being worshipped as a god, Asar or Osiris, has its origins in, in the constellation Orion. And remember, the constellations were simply the stars that were created in the beginning. Okay. Remember, we talked about this in Genesis chapter 1. And so let's take a trip there, because I want you to see the whole idea of, give me a second, guys. And so let me just read this real quick, and then I'm going to go to the scripture in Genesis. So the constellation, which means the stars, the constellation Orion predates Greek mythology by thousands of years. So there are many people who believe that this whole concept of Orion came from Greek culture. It did not. All right. The constellations of Orion predates Greek culture or Greek mythology by thousands of years and has its origins in Egypt. Now, we're going to show that the origins are not in Egypt. This is what people believe. The origins are in Egypt. The Greeks added their cultural spin by renaming it after their mythical hunter Osiris. Remember, I told you Osiris is a Greek word. And who remembers the Egyptian word for Osiris? Do you remember? It starts with an A. It's Asar. Asar. All right. And so when the Greeks put their spin on it, they renamed this this god from Asar to Osiris, which is the mythical hunter. All right. We're going to go to this source really quick, but I want to show you in Genesis chapter 1. Okay, Genesis 1. And let's go to verse 16. Genesis 1:16. And God made two great lights. The greater light to rule the day, we know is the sun. Okay. And then the lesser light to rule the night, which is the moon. And then it says he made the stars also. And so that's where they get these constellations from. And so there is reason and purpose to understand and to know that the stars were created. But I want to show you something. See, this is the mistake many of us in the past. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 4, and we're going to look at, I believe it's verse 19. Hold on. Let's go to verse 15 and start there. Go to verse 15. Start here. Deuteronomy 4:15. Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire. Lest you corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of a male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of a finny fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. In verse 19, here we go. Watch this. Unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldest be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord thy God had divided into all nations under the whole heaven. Now watch this. He says, unless you be driven to worship them and serve them, the stars. But the Lord hath taken you and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of inheritance, and ye are this day. Okay, so he's telling the Israelites that you should not do as the other nations do, as they lift up their eyes and they see the sun, they see the moon and the stars, and they begin to worship and serve them. Now, watch this. This is exactly what we've been talking about in Egypt, where they believed that their kings or pharaohs, upon their death, were to be worshipped as gods, or Osiris or Asar, which is a constellation. We just read that. Or a gathering of stars. Okay? He says, I don't want you worshiping this, but there are those who, in spite of Yah's word, they did this anyway. All right? And so I have a very good notion to understand that Osiris, this group of stars, forming, a pattern. We sometimes talk about, oh, I can see the Milky Way. These things are named after some sort of mythical figure or form, and we have to just understand that these things that man has labeled as the Milky Way or the Big Dipper or the Little Dipper or Osiris, these group of stars forming a recognizable pattern, that you just shouldn't worship them, period. However, there's no evidence showing that the Israelites started these things, but we're going to show you the origins. We're going to show you the origins of the beginnings of the worship, the beginnings of worshiping the stars and constellations. And it wasn't with Egypt. All right. So we're going to continue to look at that. All right. And so Orion constellation myths of Sumer, Babylon, and Egypt. Okay. So I want to share this with you. This is an article or a constellation guide. Okay. A constellation guide. And I want you to see this. Okay, so Orion has been known since ancient times. The constellation is also known as a hunter. Please keep this in mind, guys. The constellation, or the stars, also are known as a hunter. Okay, so this Orion is known as a hunter. This star, this group of stars that form a figure they believe is known as a hunter. All right. But let me show you one more thing. Show you one more. Is it on this page? Let me see. Oh, here we go. So remember they were saying that this is an Egyptian origin story? No. Look at this paragraph here. Start of this sentence. It says the constellation Orion has its origin not in Egypt, but in the Sumerian mythology. Now, to answer our question, here's one piece of evidence showing that the civilization of Sumeria or Babylon came before Egypt, because Egypt, they got their idea of gods being worshipped, pharaohs being worshipped as gods from Sumeria. All right. And so we're going to continue to show this phenomena answering this question. All right. So let's keep going. And so the constellations represent the mythical hunter Orion. We just read that. which has its origins in Sumerian, not Egyptian mythology. Okay, we just read that in the Constellation Guide, showing that the origins of this mythological hunter Orion is in Sumeria, not Egypt. Now remember, Sumeria comes from Cush, and these are the kingdoms. See, y'all gonna make me show y'all this early now. These are the kingdoms that Nimrod built. Genesis 10. Okay. And yes, Genesis 10 and 10. Okay. It says, in the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. Now watch this. Let me show you what Babel. I'm going to show you that Babel is Sumeria. It's the same. Okay. Okay, so Babel or Babylon, it means confusion by mixing, because remember, this is where the Most High confused or mixed the languages. Okay, so Babel or Babylon, the ancient site and or capital of Babylonia, modern Hilla, situated on the Euphrates, which is the same place that Sumeria is. Sumeria is just the older name for Babylon or Babel. Okay. Trying to see, is it any reference to actually saying Babel, or sorry, Sumer? But yeah, you can look it up and find this out easily, that Babylon is also the ancient name for Sumer also. Okay. But I was just trying to find, is there any biblical reference to Sumer? Now you got to understand why there wouldn't be a reference to Sumer if it's not in the scripture here. Because by the time the scriptures came along, the name Sumer had evolved into Babylon. All right. So you're not going to see the word Sumer in scripture. Anyway, let's get back to the lesson at hand. Okay. And so it has origins in Sumer or Babylon, not Egypt. Okay. Again, what has its origins? The worship of these stars or constellations. They have their origins in Babylon or Sumer. Speaking of Sumer, here's a second point that shows that Sumerian or Babylonian culture came before Egypt. In Sumerian art, please write this word down. The Serpopard. Serpopard is depicted on the famous Serpopard plaque from the early dynastic period, 2800 to 2300 BC, found in the royal cemetery where? At Ur. Not in Egypt, but in Ur. Okay, Ur is in Babylon. That's exactly where Abraham was from. He was from Ur of the Chaldees, which is found in Sumer or in Babylon. This limestone plaque shows a sepulchre with the body of a feline. So this is telling you what a sepulchre is. It has the body of a feline and the head and neck of a serpent emerging from its mouth. Okay, here's the sepulchre plaque right here. Okay, you can see the image on this plaque with the long necks that are intertwined. And again, the sepulchre plaque is from the early dynastic period. I want to show you guys this because it's very important in establishing the Sumerian kingdoms or civilizations' earlier existence before Egypt. All right. And to show you that these images did not come from Egypt, but they came from Sumeria. Okay. And so you can see that plaque with the intertwined necks of this Sepulchre mythical beast. Now, the word Sepulchre is a modern combination of the words serpent and leopard. Now, have you ever wondered where the idea of wearing leopard skin came from? You ever wonder where that came from? I'm about to show you today. All right. You got many people, men, women alike, children. You got leopard skin underwear. You got leopard skin shirts. You got leopard skin shoes. You got leopard skin hats. All this. Where did this come from? I'm going to show you today. All right. So the sepulchre, again, is a combination of the words serpent and leopard. Serp and opard. And you put those together, you get sepulchre. Right. Now, here we go. The Narmer palette. All right. Look at these dates. Look at these dates. I want to show y'all this. Okay. So this Sepulchre plaque was 28 to 2300. Then we're going to go back even further. All right. 3200 to 3000 BC with the Narmer palette. This Narmer palette was not found in Egypt, but it was found in Sumer, you guys. And so if you notice on the right side, so this is the front side of the plaque with Narmer. This image is of Narmer. Notice Narmer has the white. We went over this last week. He has on this white king's crown, which shows that he is the king of the south or upper Egypt, sorry. And he is dominating, and this is an image showing that he is uniting the upper and lower kingdom of Egypt. However, Narmer's not from Egypt. He's from Sumer, because that's where this plaque was found. And then on the back side of this palette, you can see the sepulchre. Okay. You can see the sepulchre with the leopard, with the long intertwined necks. Okay. That's 32 to 3000 BC. So let's do one more visit to Genesis chapter 10. One more visit. I want to show you guys something. So one more visit to Genesis 10, 8 through 11. Okay. And Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. Verse 9. Watch this. Nimrod was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, watch this, the mighty hunter before the Lord. I want you guys to keep this in mind. Nimrod was a mighty hunter. Please write that down. Nimrod was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, for those of you who have been using your, your T-charts from last week, over here where it says Nimrod, you want to write Genesis 10 and 9. Genesis 10 and 9, because Nimrod was a mighty hunter before the Lord. You need to have that in your notes because of what we're going to be sharing coming up. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That was Genesis chapter 10, verse 9. Okay. Now let's keep going. Verse 10. Now notice this. It says he began to be mighty, a mighty one in the earth. Verse 8. Now, why was he mighty? He was mighty because he was a mighty hunter. That's number one. And then he was also mighty because he was a kingdom builder. All right. It says he was the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom was Babel. Okay. Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Now, let me just go here because I want to show you these kingdoms that he built. Okay, so we looked at Babel already. Okay, which is the same for Babylon, which is the same as Sumer or Sumeria. But then it says Erech. Okay, Erech is also in Babylon. Look what it says. About 40 miles northwest of Ur toward Babylon on the left bank of the Euphrates River. Okay, so we're going to see all these cities and kingdoms that Nimrod built, showing that he was a mighty kingdom builder. And then Akkad also. Okay, for those of you who want to make some kind of a connection, if you ever watch the movie Scorpion King, it talks about the Akkadian Empire. Okay, this was in Babylon or Sumer. Okay, the Akkadian Empire was in Sumer, and Nimrod built that. Okay, then it goes to Calneh, which is another city, but then it says in the land of Shinar. Okay, the land of Shinar is the country of two rivers in the Hebrew. Okay, the ancient name for the territory later known as Babylonia or Chaldea, where Abraham was from. Keep that connection with Abraham because we're going to come back to it a little bit later. All right. And so if I can, I want to show you. I've shown you maps already. You know what? I can just go back to my lesson and show you the map. I don't feel like looking one up. But all those names that of the cities that Nimrod built, I want to show you a map. That's not a very good one. Let's see. That's a good one, but you can't see. It's kind of blurred. Hold on. Where are my maps? Where are my good maps? I just might have to. That's too busy. That's not detailed enough. Neither is that one. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm gonna have to look up one for you. Because I want you to see these cities that Nimrod built. Okay. I want you to see them clearly. Okay, so let me show you the cities. So Genesis 10, 8 through 11. So I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go to images. Hold on. Map of cities. Okay. Let's see. So let me find one that's clear.
Can you change the screen?
Yep. Thank you. That's not a detailed one. Let me try this one. That's not detailed enough either. Hold on real quick. Let me try this. Again, I really want you guys to see these kingdoms that he built and where they are. I think this is let's see. Okay, here's Uruk, Babylon, or Babel. Okay, so that's a pretty good one. Let me see. You know what? Okay, that's a clear one right there. Okay. Okay, so this is showing Kingdom of Nimrod from 3200 28 BC, Genesis 10 and 10. All right. So you have these cities. Okay, you have the land of Shinar right here. Okay, pointing in this area. All right. And if you come over here to the right, you will see this turquoise kind of greenish blue line. All right. That is the Tigris. And the one over here, the top, is the Euphrates. So the cities between the Tigris and Euphrates. Okay, so you have Sumerian king list. We're going to look at that. So the Tigris is up here, sorry. And then the Euphrates is over here to the left. So you have Babylon right here, where it says Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. I don't know if you can see my mouse. It's the upper left side. And then you have coming down, you have Uruk or Eric, as we read in the text in Genesis 10. And then you have Ur of the Chaldees in the purple section here. Okay. And so, yeah, all of these cities Nimrod built. These are the cities that Nimrod actually built. Okay. And then let's see. And so, yeah, these are all the cities that are mentioned in the book of Genesis. Okay, you have this one also. You have Eric down here. You have, let's see. How come none of these are showing Nineveh? Let's see. Oh, yeah, this is probably a better one here. Oh, yeah, this is probably a better one. Yep. So you see down here in the south, you see down here, Chaldees. You have Elam over here to the right of the Euphrates. You have Babylonia over here, or Babylon here. You have Calah, Nineveh. Okay. And so you have these cities, Mesopotamia. So yeah, you have these cities that Nimrod actually built. And so these are the connections. So before, watch this, before Mizraim was even developed, you have Nimrod building all of these cities in Sumeria or Babylon, which is another piece of evidence showing that the Babylonian or Sumerian kingdom came before Egypt. All right. And so that's why we took one more visit. So we watch what we have. We have the kingdoms that Nimrod built. He was a mighty kingdom builder. He was a hunter also. We have the Narmer palette showing that King Narmer was the one that united the Egyptian kingdom, and he did not come from Egypt. He came from he came from, yes, Sumeria. All right. And then we have the Sapopar that is on the Narmer palette, originating, as we saw, in Sumeria. And so all of these are pointing to Sumeria having the preeminence or the origin over Egypt. Now, we did not see it. We could not see it on this image of the Narmer palette. However, the actual garment showing what was hunted that was worn by Nimrod or Narmer and other pharaohs, signifying divinity and strength. Now, watch this. If you look at this image over here of this pharaoh, if you look closely, you can see that it looks like a leopard. You can see that it looks like a leopard. Okay, you can see the tail coming down in between his legs, and then you can see it being wrapped around his shoulders. And on his left shoulder, you can see the image of the leopard's head. All right. And so let me show you this article. Okay, so this article is coming from the ancient African Egyptian Kemetic spirituality. And so it says Sumerian myth of Orion. Again, the earliest story concerning Orion was recorded by the Sumerians, who ruled the southernmost region of Mesopotamia, or the land between the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, not Egypt. Okay? And so they're saying that this Sapopard beast or mythical creature didn't come from Egypt. Okay? It came from Sumeria. Okay? Orion constellation myths of Sumer, Babylon, and Egypt is showing that this myth did not originate in Egypt, but it originated in Sumer or Babylon. Okay, so this Orion constellation, these stars, the worship of these stars. Remember, Nimrod was a rebellious individual. That's why he was trying to build the tower all the way up to heaven in rebellion against the Most High. Okay. And so we can see further rebellion as he was a worshiper of the stars. We have Deuteronomy 4:19 says you shouldn't do that. But also this is showing that the origin of this creature, this Sapopar, did not come from Egypt. But the Egyptian pharaohs wore the garments of the Sapopar on them. This leopard. But we see that the earliest story concerning Orion was recorded by the Sumerians, who ruled the southernmost region of Mesopotamia, or the land lying between the Tigris and Euphrates River. Okay, so again, that's another piece of evidence showing that these origins of civilization is coming from Sumeria, not Egypt. All right, so let's just do a recap. So these are the connections based on my studies. Notice I threw that caveat in there, based on my studies. You're going to have to do your own study. You're going to have to question my study. It's open to question. If you can show me where this information is not accurate, that it's not linked up or synced up in time, it's called anachronism, when you take something older or later, earlier, and then try to apply it back to something older. That's called an anachronism. Am I giving any anachronistic arguments here? That's for you to go back and study and say, hey, Benz, your time period is off. Okay. So we looked at the Narmer palette. We looked at Genesis 8-11, showing that Nimrod was a mighty hunter. Okay. Now, this information, I'm arguing, is showing that Nimrod and Narmer are the same person. Okay, if you listened last week, when we got to the first Pharaoh, there was discrepancy on the name. All the other pharaohs, you could clearly see their names, but the first Pharaoh to unite Upper and Lower Egypt, there was a discrepancy on the name. Why is that? I believe that based on my studies, because Nimrod and Narmer were the same person. So you can see both they were wearing leopard skin. You can see Narmer on the Narmer palette wearing the leopard skin, and then Nimrod was a mighty hunter. I'm going to get to that. About this. Where did this leopard come from? We see Narmer wearing it on the Narmer palette, but was that the origin? We're going to show you that with Nimrod in just a minute. All right. And then we have Nimrod and Narmer. They were both deified as Osiris, the Greek name, or Asar, the Meta Nature. All right, we're going to continue. Now, look at these sepulchres, guys. All the way back even further. The Jasper, this is called the Jasper cylinder seal. It's a monstrous lions or leopards. And they say that they're lion-headed eagles, but it comes from Mesopotamia. All right. And Uruk in the period of 4100 to 3000 BC. So this is really old, predating Egyptian civilization. Okay. Egyptian civilization came after 3000, like 2800 BC. This is going all the way back to 4100 BC. Okay, so the use of the animal skins for Kushite kings, and we're going to get to why I said Kushites, because again, Nimrod was the son of Cush. We read that in Genesis chapter 10. Okay, especially those of felines like lions, leopards, and cheetahs were used in ancient Egyptian royal and elite clothing as symbols of power, status, and dominance over the natural world. Now, where did this come from? We're arguing that it came from Sumer. It didn't originate in Egypt. However, the Egyptians used it. Remember, upon the death of Narmer, he was worshipped as a god, Osiris. We went over that earlier. I just wanted you to remember that. This is also testified. The Ethiopians or Cushites, remember, Ethiopians is a Greek name for the Hebrew word Cushites. Likewise say, watch this. This is what the Cushites say about Mizraim or the Egyptians. The Egyptians are a colony drawn out from them by Osiris. And we know him to be Narmer. Learned from the Ethiopians or the Cushites the custom of deifying their kings and their care and cost in their burials. Who? So watch this. It's saying that they learned this from the Sumerians, y'all, the Cushites, not the Egyptians. Okay, learned from the Ethiopians or Cushites the custom of deifying their kings. So we have a source. Of course we do. That's what we do. We show and prove over here. We're not playing. We're not just saying stuff. Okay. So let me share this with you. This is Diodorus, who was a Greek historian. And so let's see. I think it said page 86. Hold on. Let me see what the reference is. Yeah, 86 and 87. So let's see. Okay, so here's 86. Let me see. Okay. So the Ethiopian, according to Diodorus, a Greek historian, he says the Ethiopians say they were, can you guys see this? That's as large as I can make it. Yep, you should be able to see that. It says the Ethiopians say that they were the first men that ever were in the world. And that to prove this, they have clear demonstrations, for they say they are natives of the country and not strangers that came to settle there, and are therefore, by general consent, almost of all men called autochtones. And that, in every man's opinion, is most probable that those that inhabit the South were the first living men to spring up out of the earth. For being that the heat of the sun at the first exhaled the moisture of the earth, and in the first production of all things, influenced with quickening virtue, they say it's very rational to conclude that those places next to the sun should be the first parents of all living creatures. Now, that's a very interesting concept, because it's actually making an argument that Sheikh Anta Diop made, one of the great historians, is saying that because Ethiopia is so close to the equator, that you would need a high level of melanin in your skin, hence Black people, to really survive these places that were very hot and close to the equator. And we know that people with melanin or melanated skin would have been able to do that. Okay, so this is, now let me say this. We wouldn't have to argue this way if Europeans wouldn't lie and say that Greek civilization was the origin of mankind. See, we wouldn't have to go here with color and race, and if they would just tell the truth about history. Okay, but since they don't tell the truth, we got to go there and show and prove. So let's see. It's affirmed among them that they were the first that instituted religious worship and pompous sacrifices with solemn assemblies. Talking about the Ethiopians, not the Egyptians, and other things used in the service and to honor and to the honor of the gods. And they hold that the sacrifices of the Ethiopians are the most acceptable to the gods, and any other. And the testimony thereof they produce the most ancient poet and the greatest authority amongst the Grecians, who in his Iliads introduced Jupiter with the rest of the gods traveling into Ethiopia to the anniversary sacrifice and solemn festival prepared for them by the Ethiopians. That's saying what I just said, that these Greek individuals, these Grecians, where it says greatest authority amongst the Grecians, who in his Iliad introduces Jupiter with the rest of the gods traveling into Ethiopia, where they got these concepts from and just changed their name, put their Greek spin on it, right? And they got this information from Africans, y'all, specifically Ethiopians
I have a question.
or Cushites. Yes.
Can you go back to the other paragraph?
This one, 86. Mm-hmm.
Where it says, okay, what you just read, they produced the most ancient poet and the greatest authority among the Grecian, who in his Iliads introduced Jupiter with the rest of the gods traveling into Ethiopia to the anniversary. That's the part I want to see. To the anniversary sacrifice and solemn festival prepared for them by the Ethiopians. Was this anniversary sacrifice and solemn festival like Passover, and they came in ruining a Passover?
Oh, no. This was a sacrifice to their gods. Remember, we talked about earlier that the Ethiopians would worship their dead kings or leaders as gods. And so this is this anniversary sacrifice we're talking about. Remember, we said that they would sacrifice all these things to their God to make sure that they would have a successful transition into the afterlife, going from transitioning from king on earth to God in the afterlife.
So this will be pre-Passover.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, yes. Now let's continue the page. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so let's continue. And they say it is very evident that the gods reward them for their piety, bringing all these sacrifices to their gods. You know, men who were kings in Ethiopia that transitioned into gods in the afterlife. And so it says it's evident that the gods reward them for their piety, for that they were never brought into subjection to any foreign prince. Now, that is actually true. Historically, Ethiopia is one of the only countries, probably the only country on the continent of Africa that has never been in subjection to a foreign ruler. That goes all the way back to this time we're talking about here, all the way to present day. You can look that up. All right. But always remain a free people and at perfect peace amongst themselves. I don't know about that, but that's what they say. And although many of those most potent princes likewise have invaded, yet none have succeeded in their attempts. Okay. And so let's continue. I want to show you one more thing. The Ethiopians likewise say that the Egyptians are a colony. We read that, drawn out of them by Osiris. Now remember, Osiris was Narmer on earth as a king, but once he died, they worshipped him as Osiris or Asar. We already said that. Okay. But it says this, look at this. The Ethiopians say that the Egyptians are a colony. Now, what is a colony, y'all? Remember, think about the 13 colonies that would eventually become the United States. The British had 13 colonies in what would be called the United States. What did that mean for the British? It meant that, go ahead.
Settlers?
Yep, they were settlers. Yep. And what else? Can anyone else think of anything else? Who had the power in that relationship?
Well, they rebelled against the rule over there, so they came and settled over here. So they were rebellious in that degree.
Right. But also the British who had these colonies in the United States, it showed that the British had the power over these 13 colonies. And so it says here that the Ethiopians say that the Egyptians are a colony of the Ethiopians. Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, yes.
Drawn out from them by Osiris. And so remember the Narmer palette showed that Narmer became Osiris after his death. And Narmer, remember, was the first pharaoh to unite Upper and Lower Egypt. Okay, keep that in mind.
So it's the same people. They just rebelled against one thing and went and did their own thing. Yes, their own thing.
Like explain that out a little bit more.
So what I'm taking from what you explained is the Egyptians were Ethiopians that rebelled against whatever they was doing. They followed Nimrod and his Tower of Babel. It was that's the same thing I was thinking. They were rebelling against what's going on here, and he became a mighty person over there. So that Egyptians were really Ethiopians, but you said they were drawn out of them. So they became their own culture, essentially, correct? Or
yes, I would just make a little adaptation to that. I would just say that they wouldn't be the same as the Ethiopians. They were intermixing with the Ethiopians.
Or Christian Mizraim, right? Because it's two different people.
Right. They were intermixing. There were marriages. There were relationships because they were so close together. And so this combination of these people became the Egyptians, yes. But notice what it says down here. It says, moreover, I'm going to highlight it. Moreover, they affirm that most of the Egyptian laws are the same with those in Ethiopia. There's another further evidence. The colony still observing the customs of their ancestors, and that they learned from the Ethiopians the custom of deifying their kings. You see that? They learned that from the Ethiopians, and their care and cost of their burials and such like things used among them, besides the making of statutes and the characters of their letters. That's interesting. The characters of their letters too. They got the Metanet. That's man. They're saying that the Metaneture originated in Ethiopia. Wow. Okay. So again, there's information that is based on my studies. I'm showing you my studies. I'm showing you where I'm getting this information from. I'm not just making this stuff up out of my head. I'm reading the works of other people and basing my understanding on that. All right. Okay. So we just read this. We just saw this in Diodorus, the historian, the Greek historian. He's agreeing with the Cushites and the Ethiopians. All right. Now let's get back to this custom of deifying their kings and the wearing of leopard skin. Okay, so in the book called The Egyptian World, by Alex Wilkinson, Clothing and Cook in the Ancient Egypt, lion or leopard and cheetah skins were worn as cloaks or capes by kings or pharaohs and other elite members of society as symbols of power and status. That's why Narmer, on the Narmer palette, was wearing this kingly, powerful symbol of a leopard. Okay. Now, again, we're going to make the connection between this leopard and Nimrod. So in another book called The Study of the Ancient Near East, I hate calling it the Near East because near to what? They're saying Near East because it's near to Europe. I don't like that. Stop making Europe the focus. I'd rather call it Western Asia. Okay, not East Asia with Japan, but Western Asia coming back toward Israel, the Levant, Babylon, etc. All right. Well, in this book called The Ancient Near East in the 21st Century, the use of leopard skin. Oh, this is by William Foxwell. On page 361, it says the use of lion and leopard skins in the royal regalia conveyed the idea of the king's dominance over the natural world and its most powerful creatures, which the leopard happens to be one of the world's most powerful creatures. Okay, in another book, here's another evidence. It's 3 pieces of evidence. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let a matter be established. Ancient Egyptian materials and technology. Okay, by Paul T. Nicholson and Ian Shaw. Page 268 to 298. Animal skins and furs, particularly those leopards and cheetahs, were used for clothing and furnishings by the elite class. Specifically, that's on page 271. Okay. And so, guys, look, the most direct parallels between the art of Egypt and that of Western Asia, which some people call the Near East or the Middle East, is provided by intertwined necks of the sarcophagus. Okay. These representations, or in these representations, from the palette of King Narmer, we showed you that the intertwined sarcophagus, these long neck creatures on the reverse side of the intertwined necks are probably related to an Elamite or Mesopotamia design. We showed that. Okay. Michael Rice, who wrote Egypt's Making, The Origins of Ancient Egypt. He says this. Michael Rice was a British Egyptologist and an archaeologist who specialized in pre-dynastic and early dynastic periods of ancient Egypt. He says, in the above book, which is this one here, I just showed, in this book that he wrote, Rice likely discussed and analyzed the Narmer palette, as it is one of the most significant archaeological finds from the period when ancient Egyptian civilization was emerging and becoming unified under the first pharaonic dynasty led by King Narmer the Kushite. Okay. As an expert on the formative phases of ancient Egyptian civilization, he would have undoubtedly devoted significant analysis to the Narmer palette and its contextual importance. His interpretations of this pivotal archaeological artifact were likely influential in the field of pre-dynastic and early dynastic Egyptian study. Okay, and so here you can see in his book, in Rice's book, chapter 3, page 107 and 108, the Narmer palette, which shows two quadrupeds with the bodies of lions, with huge intertwined necks, with feline heads. Both are held on leashes by two attendants. You can see that in the Narmer palette also. The circular area between the necks is where the coal or cosmetics is ground. One can see the device of two serpopards with intertwined necks, typical of Elamite and Western Asiatics. Okay. Again, Western Asiatics is dealing with Babylon, Mesopotamia, Sumeria. You got to get into geography, yo. This geography is important. You got to know where and when and why and how. You have to know all of those things. If you want to come to a correct interpretation of scripture, a correct interpretation of history, you got to know the whens, the wheres, the whys, and the hows. You just got to. You can't fool around with this. And so if you don't know your geography, your history, et cetera, miss me with all your opinions. Now, let's get back to Nimrod. Okay. There's some bold statements here. Nimrod is Ashur or Asar. Oh my goodness. Oh, we're going to have to prove this out. So let's go to scripture first. But before we go to scripture, let's take a brief break. I need to take a brief break here. And let's take a brief break. I'll be right back. All right. All right, here we go. So let's look at Genesis chapter 10 and verse 11, because I need to show you guys this. I mean, I can say Nimrod is a Shur or a Sar, but let's look at it. So when we go to Genesis 10 and 11, we're going to see in the King James Version that it's going to say, out of that land went forth a Shur. Now, I need to tell you something. In the Hebrew language, you have what is called the letter shin or sin. If the pronunciation is a shin, which means there's a dagesh on the right side of the letter. Let me actually show you what I'm talking about so that my visual learners will. Oh, hold on. Okay. All right. Here we go. Okay, so this is a good example. Let me show you guys this. Okay. So if you look at these two letters, hold on, these two. Wait. Well, if you look at this letter, they're all the same letter. This is with the dot or the dagesh on the left side. This would make this letter make the sin sound, the S sound. Okay. If the dagesh was on the right, done, as we have here, if the dagesh or the dot was on the right, it would make the sh sound or the shin sound. So watch this. The word assure, that's the shin. The word asar is the sin. Now, we know in linguistics, when you're going from one language to another, from Hebrew to Medu Neter or any language really, sometimes vowels change, but it's the same word. And so based on my linguistic studies of this particular word, assure and asar. Now remember who Asar was. Asar was the god that Narmer was worshipped as. Remember the Greek word for Asar is Osiris. Keep up with me, y'all. You should have this in your notes. You should have this on your charts. This is why taking notes up in this joint is so important. All of these things should have been on your notes. Okay. Oh yes. Yes, indeed. So let me see. And so this is why I say Nimrod is Asar or Ashur. The scripture says this: out of that land went forth Ashur and built Nineveh and the city of Rehoboth and Calah. But the ESV says, from that land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh. Okay, so in one particular version, it's saying that out of that land Ashur went forth and built Nineveh. This is saying he. Now, who is the he? Who is the he that we're referring to here? So let's go to Genesis 10. Who is the he? Well, look at verse 9. The he is Nimrod. And the beginning of his kingdom. In verse 11, out of that land went forth Ashur. Okay. And if we look at the Bibles, the translations, okay. And so we see from that land, he went to Assyria. From there, he expanded. And so we see the first translation in the King James. It says, out of that land went forth Ashur. Okay. From that land, he went to Assyria. Okay. So I'm arguing that this Nimrod could be looked at as Ashur or Asar. Okay. So let's continue. So if we look at this biblical reference in Micah chapter 5 and verse 6, it says, and they shall waste the land of Assyria, which is Nineveh. Now remember, Assyria took the Israelites into captivity in 722 BC. But notice what it says, and they shall waste the land of Assyria. And so God was going to get revenge on Assyria because they took his people into captivity. Of course, it was for disobedience. But it says they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod. We know that's Babylon, because in 586, Babylon took the Israelites into captivity. And it says, in the land of Nimrod, in the entrances thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian, and he cometh into our land, and when he treaded within our borders. Now, watch this. Let's go to Micah 5:6. It's going to say the same thing that I just read, but I want to show you in the scripture. And they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod, which is Babylon. Now remember, Nimrod built Assyria and Nineveh. He built those. We read that in Genesis chapter 10, 8 through 11. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian when he cometh into our land, and when he treadeth within our borders. Okay. And so that's an interesting concept, showing that the Israelites, through God's providence, would take revenge on the Babylonians and the Assyrians. Now let's look at this historical reference, because what I'm showing you is that there's going to be a destruction of these kingdoms. Now, this book that I have is called The Historical and Chronological Context of the Bible by Bruce Gore, pages 5.0 to 5.3. There's a lot of reading in this section, but it's essentially showing you the historical breakdown of the Assyrian and Babylonian empires. Okay. Now, I don't want to take the time to read all of this, but man, there's some very interesting information in here. What it's showing you is how this prophecy came about in Micah 5:6. How was the Lord able to, through the Israelites, take down Assyria and Babylon? And so this historical reference is showing you the actual battles and the destabilization of Assyria and Babylon and what happened during those historical time periods. And just let me just read briefly here. This is on page 5.2. It says, in Assyria, things were equally unstable, with internal conflicts bordering at times on civil war. The conflict continued until 623, when Saracus finally defeated and killed Ashur Etel Ilani and became the sole ruler of Assyria. Okay, the Babylonian War probably distracted Saracus from noticing a new threat rising in the east, centered in the Median king Cyaxares or Xerxes, son of Pherotes. Okay, so you have the Babylonian War going on, and then you have the Assyrians, whose country became unstable. And these kinds of historical conflicts led to Micah 5:6, where it says that, and they shall waste the land of Assyria by the sword and the land of Nimrod, okay, which is Babylon. So you have Babylon and Assyria being enthralled in heated battle with their enemies, which destabilized both countries, and it allowed the Israelites to rise up and to get Yah's revenge on them. And so that's just in a nutshell what this historical reference is referring to. All right. Now, why is that important? Why is that important? Well, we're going to get to why that's important as we look at the Nimrod connection. Shows the origins of the Egyptian civilization was with Nimrod. Okay, so when we look at this prophecy, what we're seeing is the rise of the Assyrian and Babylonian nations or civilizations that rose up and took Israel into captivity. Now, when you have the rising up of Assyria and Nimrod, who did that? Where did the origin? What is the origin of Assyria and Babylon having this power to do that? Well, it's with Nimrod. It's with Nimrod. Okay, so let's look at Nimrod. Now, this is going to shock y'all, because in this book, let me share this with you. In this book, y'all, it's called Nimrod, Darkness in the Cradle of Civilization. Okay, by Stephen Merrill, M.E. Okay, did I have this as a reference here? Hold on. Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, yes, we're going to show and prove today. And I've already been going an hour. Let's see, I started at 10:30, so it's yeah, hour and a half. That's okay. Okay, so we have Nimrod in this book, Darkness in the Cradle of Civilization, on page 14 and 15. Let me read real quick. Remember, we talked about how Nimrod was a mighty hunter, and we talked about how Narmer, King Narmer, or the Pharaoh Narmer, he was a hunter also, and that he had on the leopard, or the leopard skin. Do you remember that? Watch this. Because it just says that Nimrod was a mighty hunter in the earth. It doesn't say what he hunted. What did he hunt, y'all? Well, this book tells us. On page 14, it says Nimrod yearned to share his plans with his father. Nimrod yearned to share his plans with his father. Who was Nimrod's father, y'all? Cush. Yes, Nimrod's father was Cush. So it says he yearned to share his plans with his father. Surely Cush would assume an active role creating the new empire. Now remember, all those empires in Genesis chapter 10 that Nimrod built. Remember that. Remember in Genesis 10, it talked about the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom. Okay, that's in verse number 10. Look at that. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of the land went forth Ashur and built Nineveh and the cities of Rehoboth and Calah. And Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, the same is a great city. Now watch this. This text is telling us that he wanted to share his plans with his father. Surely Cush would assume an active role in creating a new empire. Nimrod believed his brothers, who were Nimrod's brothers? Who were Nimrod's brothers? Who were the sons of Cush? Okay, look at all these sons of Cush, which are Nimrod's brothers. He assumed that Seba would help, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, Sabteka, and the sons of Ramah, Sheba. Okay, those were his nephews. But look at his brothers: Seba, Havilah, Sabta, and Ramah, and Sabteka. All of these were Nimrod's older brothers. And he says here, he assumed that Cush would help and that they would take an active role in helping. And it says Nimrod believed his brothers would also assist. Watch this. While washing before a morning meal, Nimrod heard a racket and growling near the cave where he slept. He ran to investigate the commotion, and found a young leopard. Key number one. He ventured into his trap, apparently following the scent of a boar carcass. So watch what Nimrod did. Talks about he's a great hunter in verse number 9. A mighty hunter before the Lord in verse 9 right here. Look what he did. He set a trap with the carcass of a boar, and then he created this trap and trapped the leopard. Nimrod had fashioned the trap from reeds growing along the riverbank. And then Nimrod says this: I shall teach you to hunt by my commands. Nimrod gloated. You will learn to protect your master before feeding your belly. That's a good idea. You don't eat before you work. You work, then you eat. You don't work, you don't eat. That's scripture. It says this: after 5 days in the wilderness, he mounted a large black mule and returned home, carrying the caged leopard. He immediately began training it, and within several months, the animal's loyalty amazed Nimrod's family. It amazed Cush. It amazed his brothers. Okay? And then it says, this leopard will help me track ferocious beasts or hunt for ferocious beasts and protect me from harm. Nimrod boasted to his brothers. Now watch this. When the scripture says that Nimrod was a mighty one in the earth and he was a mighty hunter, he hunted not only leopards and caught one and trained it to be a hunter with him, hence the leopard skin. But then watch this. On the Narmer palette, here's another argument that Narmer and Nimrod are the same person. Not only were they worshipped as Osiris or Asar, but also they're both associated with leopards. All right. And so we can see this connection. This is very powerful because now it tells us, see, before this, did we know what Nimrod hunted? It just said he was a mighty hunter. But now we know what Nimrod actually hunted. He hunted leopards. Okay. Not only did he hunt leopards, but he killed them and possibly wore their skin to protect him from the elements of the weather. Okay. Now watch this, y'all. We're about to go deep. We're about to go deep. In the Tanakh, in Targum Jonathan, in Genesis chapter 10, 8 through 11, and Genesis 16, 1 and 5. Y'all ready for this? Please write this reference down because I want you to go back and check it. Please write
on the screen, please. I'm not sure. Are you?
Sorry. Please write that reference down. Tanakh, Targum Jonathan. Ho, ho, ho. Well, we're about to get into it right now, y'all. Tanakh, Targum Jonathan, or Jonathan. So now we have a Mesopotamian source giving us more in-depth information about what Nimrod actually hunted. Okay. And so in the book called Nimrod, Darkness and the Cradle of Civilization, pages 14 and 15, we saw that Nimrod was a mighty hunter of leopards. This goes back and connects us to the Narmer palette, where Narmer had on and was wearing a leopard skin across his chest, which gives us the origins of how African civilization, and even up to this day, people, and explains why people wear leopard skin. It's a sign of royalty. It's a sign of power over creation and wild creatures. Some people didn't know why they was wearing leopard skin, but now you know.
Elite bougie.
Yes, that royalness, that royalty. Right? So now I'm going to show you, I'm about to blow you guys up now. We're going to go to Tanakh, and then we're going to go to Targum Jonathan. So you keep scrolling. So here's the Targums. Okay. Targum Jonathan. Jonathan on Genesis. Then we're going to go to chapter 10. And we're going to look in, did I say verse 1? Oh, yeah, 10, 8 through 11. 10, so verse 8 through 11. And Cush begot Nimrod. We read that in the scriptures. He began to be a mighty, watch this, to be mighty in sin and to rebel before the Lord in the earth. How did he rebel? He built a Tower of Babel in rebellion because he said, this is going to be to the glory of Nimrod and not to the glory of Yah. He was a mighty rebel before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, from the day that the world was created, there hath not been as Nimrod mighty in hunting. Now we know what he actually hunted. He hunted leopards and other wild beasts, and a rebel before the Lord. Okay, this is 10. We have one more verse in 11. And the beginning of his kingdom was Bavel. Now we know that the bait or the vait, if you really look at this word in Hebrew, Babel or Babylon is Bavalon the Great, and Hadass and Netzibin. Now, some of you are wondering, what are these places? I recognize Bavel or Beth. These words are Aramaic, y'all. They're Aramaic. That's what Targum actually means. And we're going to look at that. Targum actually means the common or used language of the time. That's what Targum means. Okay, remember Aramaic replaced Hebrew in the Assyrian and Babylonian captivities. Okay, that was the language that the Israelites began to speak. This is why Yeshua said the words to the girl who was dead and he brought her back to life. What did he say? Kumai, Naphtali, or that's an Aramaic saying. Arise and live. Okay. Right. So that's what these names are. They're Aramaic names. From that land went forth Nimrod and reigned in Atur. Again, that's a Aramaic name because he would not be in the council of a divided generation. And he left those 4 cities, and the Lord thereupon gave him a place, and he built 4 other cities in Nineveh, Pelatiath, Kartha, and Pariath. Okay, so that's verse 11. Now we're going to go to Genesis 16, 1 and 5. Are y'all ready for this? No, you're not, because I wasn't either. Watch this, y'all. So we're going to go to 16. Oh, why did I do that? I got to go all the way back to the beginning. Talking on Jonathan on Genesis 16. Wait, did I say 16? Yep, 16, 1 and 5. Okay. But Sarah, the wife of Abram, had not borne to him, but he had a handmaid. Look at this word of Mitzraitha. That's the Aramaic for Mitzrayim, or Egypt, or Egyptian. Okay. A Egyptian, and her name was Hagar. Watch this. A daughter of Pharaoh, whom he gave to him as a handmaid at the time that he received her, being struck by the word from before the Lord. Watch this, y'all. I'm going to go to verse 5. This is going to... Okay, here we go. Here we go. Watch this now. And Sarah said to Abram, all my affliction is from thee, being secure, thou wouldest do me justice. I left the land and house of my father and came up with thee to a foreign land. And far as much as I was not able to become a mother, wasn't able to have children, I set free my handmaid and gave her to lie in thy bosom. And she seeth that she had conceived, and mine honor is despised before her. But now is my affliction manifest before the Lord, who will spread peace between me and thee. And the land shall be replenished from us, Sarah said, nor shall we need the help of the progeny or the children of Hagar. Remember, Hagar is not going to produce the child of promise. That would be a blessing to the nations. So Sarah says that the land shall be replenished from us, not Hagar and her seed, Ishmael, nor shall we need the help of Ishmael, her prodigy, because who was the promised son? Isaac, not Ishmael. So it says we don't need the help of the progeny of Hagar, who is the daughter of Pharaoh, Bar Nimrod. Now remember what Bar means. You guys remember that, right? Bar means son of Nimrod. So watch this. Oh my God.
Wow.
It's saying that the pharaohs were the sons of Nimrod. Oh my goodness. Now, Pastor, what are you talking about? What are you saying? Benz? What are you saying here? Let's go to the Egyptian king list. What is meant by Pharaoh or Pharaoh bar Nimrod?
Son of Nimrod.
Watch this. We're going to go to the king's list. Now watch this. It says here, you may not be able to see this very well. Hold on, let me share it because it's kind of small. This is the late pre-dynastic period. Look who is the first king. Narmer, right? But what we read in scripture, something different. This is why I say that Narmer and Nimrod are the same person. The beginning of Nimrod's kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, Calneh, and the land of Shinar. Out of the land went Ashur, and he built Nineveh and the city of Rehoboth and Calah. Now, remember we said that the Sumerians were the ones that gave Egypt their whole understanding of kings becoming gods in the afterlife. We already read that. You should have that in your notes. Well, this king's list tells us that Narmer was the first king. He was the first pharaoh. But we know that Nimrod was the one that was the first pharaoh, the first king, because he was a kingdom builder. He built these kingdoms that came from Sumeria. Watch this. Watch this, y'all. When we talk about the pharaoh during Abraham's time in Genesis 16, where it says that, hold on. Let me show you this one, because we're going to line this up. So we have here the scripture and the event, and then we have the chronology. So let's go to Genesis 16. So we have Sarah gives Hagar. I know this is small, y'all. Let me try to make it larger. Okay. So we have Sarah gives Hagar, her Egyptian slave girl, to Abram in order to sire a son. That's Genesis 16:3. We just read that in the oral tradition. So Abram's wife Sarah took Hagar and her Egyptian slave or handmaid and gave her to her husband Abram as wife for him. This happened after Abram had lived in the land of Canaan for 10 years. That's Genesis 6:1-14. Notice the years, 1882 to 1881. Circa, around, guesstimated. Now, let's go to our king's list, 1882. Because we're talking about the meaning of Pharaoh bar Nimrod. How could Nimrod be watch this, the father of the pharaohs? When we read here that Narmer was the first one. Remember, Narmer was the one that was the first pharaoh to unify Upper and Lower Egypt. Come on and go with me, y'all. Stay tuned. Stay with me. So notice before the first dynasty. Notice the years of the first dynasty. 3000 BC. Now, when did we read about? Hold on, let me get to it because I want y'all to see this. Hold up. Let me put this king's list right next to it. So we got that king's list. Hold on. Put this one right next to it. We said that Genesis 16 was in 1882 to 1881 BC, right? Keep those dates in mind. And we have the Targum here in Genesis 16. We have the Targum in Genesis 16. And we see Pharaoh bar Nimrod. Now, watch this. Watch this. Pay close attention, y'all. If Nimrod was the father of all pharaohs, and we know that Narmer was the first pharaoh to unite both Upper and Lower Egypt, we got to go to our date, 1882. So we go down to the 5th dynasty, the 6th, 7th dynasty.
Screen.
Oh, thank you. So we got Narmer all the way up here before. This is the pre-dynastic period. Okay. This is before early dynastic, and then we have the pre-dynastic period with these 4. So we got Horus, Scorpion, Horus, Zekin, Horus Ro, and then we have Horus Narmer. Okay, that's before the first kingdom, or dynasty, I should say. Okay, look at the dates. 3250, 3050. Okay, so we got to go all the way down. Look at now watch this. Here are the years over here. We have the years over here. So we got to go to 1882. All the way down, and I'm going to show, oh, here we go. Here's 1897 to 1878. And we're all the way in Dynasty 12. Dynasty 12. Now watch this. In 1882, which is right here, here's the pharaoh during that time period. You see that? That's the pharaoh during the Middle Kingdom, the 12th dynasty. 18. Here we go again. This event where Abram was given Hagar, which is spoke about in Targum, where in Genesis 16, it says that Pharaoh was a son of Nimrod. We see Genesis 16 right here, where we see that Sarah took Hagar. And Sarah said, we don't need the progeny of Hagar. We don't need Ishmael's son. We need our own son, Isaac. That was in 1882 to 1881, approximately, circa. Then we see the King's List that shows us who possibly was the Pharaoh during that time. But it says that Nimrod is way up here. Now, let me share something about Hebrew culture. I shared this before in a lesson. When it says son of, or bar, or ben Joseph, or ben, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's the actual father. It could mean the great-grandfather, the great-great-grandfather. Okay? And so when we look here and we see Horus, which I believe is the same person as Nimrod, they're the same person. We see in the Targum, Pharaoh bar Nimrod. Pharaoh bar Nimrod. son of Nimrod. So watch this. Nimrod was the father of all the pharaohs that came after him. Why? Because Nimrod, Narmer, was the first pharaoh to unify Upper and Lower Egypt. My goodness. My goodness. That's what is meant by Pharaoh Bar Nimrod. He wasn't the biological father, but he was the pharaonic father, because he was the first to unite Upper and Lower Egypt. Good grief.
Amen.
Goodness. So watch this, y'all. How do we bring it back? How do we bring it back? Now, since we established that Sumeria or Babylon was the kingdom that preceded Egypt, we already had that evidence showing that. We just read through some sources that showed us that Egypt was a colony of Sumeria. We said that Egypt got their understanding and practice of deifying their earthly kings as gods. They got that from Sumeria. So watch this. This Decans, Decans originated from observing the stars and constellations that rose just before the sun in the period of a 10-day week that came from Egypt. We know that that couldn't have been first. So watch this. And on top of that, the 10-day week says nothing to the issue of the structure of Sunday through Saturday. We're getting somewhere. Now watch this. If the Sumerian kingdom has the Sunday through Saturday 7-day week structure, we showed that a few weeks ago in one of our lessons. Where did Sumer get that idea from? Where did Sumer get that idea from? Can I take you back? Can I take you back? Can I take you back? Now remember, if Nimrod in Genesis 10:10 says, in the kingdom, in the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad. He built all these great nations. Where did he get his ideas from? We know he got them from Cush. That was his father. But where did Cush get them from? Well, verse 6 says he got them from Ham, his father, because Ham is the father of Cush. But who's the father of Ham?
Noah.
Oh my God. Now, wait a minute. Why was Noah saved in the ark?
To repopulate the earth, and he was a righteous man.
And he was a righteous man. He was a righteous man, y'all. Let's go to Genesis 6. Ooh-wee. Look, y'all, don't be playing with your boy now. And put my hands on these sources, and I'm putting my mouth on the truth. Look at this. Genesis 6 and 9. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a what? A just man, perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. Now, wait a minute. What made Noah just and perfect? Well, we got to look at these words. What do you mean just, Pastor? Sadiq. And I'm not talking about Raphael either. Come on and go with me here. Although Raphael Sadiq, Raphael, oh my goodness, y'all don't see Raphael Sadiq is a deep brother. Raphael Sadiq. Do you know what that means? Look it up. Raphael, sorry, not Raphael, but just the word Sadiq just means lawful, righteous. Look at this. Righteous in conduct and character, righteous as justified and vindicated by God, right, correct, lawful. Now, what law did Noah have? By what standard, come on and go with me here, by what standard did Noah walk with God? By what standard was Noah considered righteousness? Or righteous, sorry. By what standard? It was the standard of the Torah. The oral Torah. Because not Moses, but Noah walked in the righteousness of the Torah, or the spoken instructions of the Most High, which included working 6 days and resting on the seventh. Oh, yes. Which included living righteous before Abba Yah. Mm-hmm. Now, let me just show you a scripture that, did I pass it? Let's look at this one right here. In Exodus 9:27, the Pharaoh sent and called Moses and Aaron and said unto them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous. Same word. The Lord is Sadiq, and I and my people are wicked. What standard was he judging his people being wicked by? It was the standard of the righteousness of God, which is the words of God, which is the Torah. Watch this. Deuteronomy 16:19. Thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift, for a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of righteousness. Where were the words of righteousness coming from? Was it coming from man? It's coming from God. We know that those words are the Torah. Watch this. Watch this, y'all. I just want to show this one last scripture and we're done. All right. Well, I'm going to have to pick it up right here next week, where I bring everything all together and show you the origin of why there is an attempt to make the seventh day Sunday instead of the real Shabbat or seventh day. So what I'm going to do next week, y'all, is I'm going to bring us all the way back to this the ICO or the ISO 8601, watch this, is an ICO standard that defines date and time formats, specifically regarding the 7-day week. ISO 8601 states, ISO 8601 prescribes that Monday is treated as the first day of the week and Sunday as the 7th day and last day of the week. Guys, I'm going to show you why they are trying to implement, and they have been trying to implement this for some time. I'm going to show you why next week. It's called the ISO 8601. Please look this up. Please study this out. Be prepared for me next week because I'm coming hard. I'm going to show you the origins of this newly found attempt to justify Sunday as the 7th day of the week instead of our current and biblical 7th day of the week, which we're celebrating today. Blessings. And look, we can see the date right here. It's American National Standard Institute, was founded in 1918, which was another attempt to reestablish Sunday as the 7th day. But we're going to show and prove that to be completely false. Blessings. Shalom, and have a blessed, wonderful Shabbat today, y'all. Blessings.
Blessings. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Shalom, everyone. Blessings.
Okay.